Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's authentic and unapologetic conversations with Latrice Torres. That's me. I am so excited to be here today. Um, I will tell you the guest that I have today, I have been trying for probably about a year to get onto this show, and I finally have her here, and I couldn't be more excited. But before I get into that, I just want to first welcome everybody to this session. Thank you for joining. If you're joining from Facebook, from YouTube, from LinkedIn, from Instagram, I think we're pretty much everywhere today. Feel free to interact with us. Jump into the comments, say hi, ask questions, make comments, talk back and forth. This is our time to actually talk to each other. I'm excited to have you here, and I'm really excited for this topic. Hey, Natasha, I love for people to be here that I see that's instantly. So, like I said, talk to me because I'm going to talk back. But with that said, I want to jump into today's presentation and our conversation and just have some fun. All right. So, today, we're going to talk about unlocking franchising for Black women. And I'm going to say this. We say this because this is the lens that we're coming from. This is the lens that we know. And we really want to provide some information, some insights, some aha moments, a lot of different things for you to take away from this. And I could not have a better person here to talk to about this. So my guest speaker today, her name is Maliesa Cadogan, and she is a franchise and leadership coach. And she is the founder of Hot Perspectives. And you know what? I don't think I broke Hot Perspectives down quite on the slide. So let me break that down. Hot actually stands for HR, operations, and training, because those are the things, that's the knowledge that she brings to her clients in terms of helping them and coaching them through the franchising continuum, whether that's from a franchisor or franchisee perspective. She's your girl, and I couldn't be happier to have her here. One of the first times we met, she said, by champion honest and open and transparent conversations, I help brands evolve from simply looking better to being better. And it stuck with me. It stuck with me so much that I put it on a sticky note, because anybody who knows me, I am a sticky note queen. And so I put it on a sticky note, and I was like, this is who she is. And I'll tell you, every conversation is exactly that. She lives up to that. I couldn't have a better person to be a part of this authentic and unapologetic brand. You guys are in for a treat today. Without any further ado, I'm going to bring up Maliesa Cadogan. Hey there.
Hey, oh, what a warm welcome. Thank you, Latrice.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I love everything about you. Do show off your shirt. We both are like repping our brands today. I don't know how to get. Can we get your shirt? Is there a way to get your shirt? Like, or do we just gotta ask you for it? We gotta
Exclusive.
ask
It's
nice. Talk
exclusive.
to you nice. Okay. Talk to her nice. That's how you get one of those shirts. You can jump on my shop and get one of my shirts though. But I'm so super excited to have you here. Thank you for doing this. I want to get that thank you out before anything else, because I really appreciate your time, your energy, and your passion. And I'm ready to get up into this. What about you?
Let's do it.
All right. So I asked you this question a little while ago. And yesterday she sent me a note and was like, I'm struggling a little bit. What's my why? And I was like, how in the hell are you struggling? Because you're like one of the few people that I know that knows your why. And so I was like, let's reframe this question. And I think I reframed it in some way of like, what impact do you want to have? What do you want to accomplish? What do you want to be known for? And then back into your why, because you already have the answer. So I'm going to flip it over to you. But what is your why? What got you into franchising?
Yeah. Um, even before I touch on the franchising piece, there are so many different ways to reflect on that question, right? Why do I get up in the morning? Why do I work so hard? Why do I make the choices I make? Um, but when I think about why Hot Perspectives, it's really born out of the fact that I'm passionate about inclusion. I
Mm,
am really passionate about inclusion. And the reason why I'm passionate about inclusion is because I know what it feels like to experience exclusion.
mm,
And when you experience exclusion at work, a place where you spend time and energy and build relationships, it can have a real impact on your life, on
mm,
how you show up, on your confidence. And so I champion inclusion for franchise in franchising because that impact flows over beyond your relationship with your coach or manager or your colleagues. It can have an impact, a lasting impact on your relationship with a brand.
mm.
And depending on your history and how you feel and how that brand resonates with you, it can really shake some stuff up, right? And
Absolutely.
and so I'm really blessed that with Hot Perspectives, I'm able to support both entrepreneurs who, might look like me and might struggle to show up in their authentic ways. I help build confidence. I help challenge perspective there. But on the franchisor side, as a consultant, I get
Mm,
to help franchisors look at their systems and help create spaces where
mm.
people feel comfortable to show up. It's not enough to just tell people, show up authentically, take up space.
Right, 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 right.
you know, we hear
Yeah.
that all the time, right? Take up space.
It's always funny to me when people are like, or when organizations. So back in my corporate days, like it used to be so cringe to me when there's like, show up your authentic self. And it's one of the reasons why I decided I'm going to own that word instead, because like, how do you do that in these spaces that aren't showing up for you? Like it's just let's say the thing, right?
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah,
and also when you talk about that, it's like you never show up to anywhere like 100% of who you are. You show up with the representation, like the highest percentage of representation that makes sense for that space. That's
yeah,
actually how we show up, right?
yes.
Because like, okay, Saturday night club, Melissa, is not Sunday morning church, Melissa, right? Like you're not like those are two different people.
Duality. Both those things can exist.
They can
No
exist. They
judgment.
both can be true, and there's nothing wrong with that. So, like when you're trying to tell people to bring your whole self, and then and you're like beating that down to them, it's like, what are you saying about the other side of that? And so that's why we got to create these spaces. So that's why I really love what you do and in the spaces that you do it in, because let's talk about that brand relationships about with brands, particularly in the climate that we're in right now. Well, yeah, and Canada, you guys you might be enjoying a little bit more, but I'm sure you guys are also very, very nervous about what is happening in the US, particularly when we have a leader who's like, hey, why don't we take your whole entire country and make you a state? Like, what are you doing? But when you have that type, like that level of rhetoric, and then it gets in, and then you see things like our economics and our buying power and our relationships with brands literally be impacted by this nonsense, then you got to think very deeply about the way you interact. So what you do is so important, and I
Absolutely.
and we need to be in that space so that we can build relationships with brands we identify with.
Absolutely. And some of the strongest brands out there, the most well-known brands out there are franchises. And so that's why I'm
Yeah,
excited to have this conversation so that we can
right.
dive into how we can take up more space and how we can challenge with our buying power
Yeah.
these organizations and these brands to do better.
Definitely, definitely. So let's jump into it. I always like, there's always two sets of people that are on these sessions, right? You have the people who are the left brain people who want to know the data, the facts, the numbers, those things like that. So we've got some stuff like that in here. And in fact, we're going to start in that space. And then we've got the right brand people who are like, but convince me why? What are we doing? Like, what should I know? What do I do? How I empower me? Like, help me out here, right? So we've got a little bit of everything for everyone. And I'm going to jump into some of that data. Let's go left brain first, and let's talk about just some facts about Black women in franchising in the United States. We're going to start with that perspective, but as I go through each one, I want you to kind of jump in and talk about what this looks like in Canada as well, so that we have some balance here. Right. So, fact number one, franchising offers Black women entrepreneurs access to proven business systems, reducing the risk associated with starting a business from scratch. I think that's true both places.
Yes, absolutely. I was reading some statistics lately, and I think it's something like 70% of businesses who start from scratch, startups, end up failing in the first 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
That number is like 10% when it comes to franchising. So when you buy into a franchise, you're buying, yes, into a brand, but what's at the foundation of that brand is systems and
Yeah,
processes.
it's right.
So proven, right? So
Proven, yeah, proven systems. Yeah, that's the benefit. That's the value that's in that. So yeah, I love that. That's a big number too, going from
yeah,
70% to 10%. Like that's huge. That's something to think about. All right. Number two, Black women-owned franchises often serve as community hubs, providing employment opportunities and contributing to local economic development. I love that piece.
yes,
I can go on and on, but I one of the things I say in so many different contexts is that, I think one of the things that makes the Black community strong is that our foundation ancestrally, we are very familial and we are very much about community. And if we can tap into that on a business level, that would be powerful.
absolutely. Something I'll also add to that is, Black women love to take care of the community, and
Mhm.
we can do that through franchising by being intentional about the
Mhm.
type of businesses that we open and share with the community. For example, education is a big sector in franchising that's growing right now, where we're focusing more on, children in STEM, tutoring. There's even one that encourages drama and building confidence skills. And these are franchises that you can buy into for as little sometimes as $10,000, $20,000. And
Mm.
so when we think about building community, we can also be intentional about the type of business that we want to
Mhm.
open up, the feel good
Yeah.
ones.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. Yeah, again, there's something about the cross. I mean, I think that's the entrepreneurial spirit, right? Is the cross between what you know and what you're passionate about. And that's a great way to set yourself up for success, for
Yes.
sure. All right. So number three, Black women franchises operate across various industries, including beauty, food services, retail, showcasing the versatility of franchising opportunities. We're going to dive into this
Yes.
because I think when people hear franchising, they think of things like, McDonald's and, stuff like that. Like that's like your first go-to or kind of food or beauty. But there's so many other things. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I always like to take on my homegirl Jilly from Philly. And I
Mhm.
always say franchising is golden. And I'm not talking about the golden arches.
Right.
There are so many other industries to tap into. I just named a few. Education is a huge one that's growing.
Mhm.
Of course, there's also beauty brands. Food still makes up more than 50% of the franchising space. So whether it's fine dining or quick service, which is
Mhm.
where I've had a lot of my experience, there are a lot of different options available. There are
Mhm.
some that require a brick and mortar, and there are lots that are based where you don't actually have to have a storefront.
Mhm.
Uh, we're seeing a big growth in health services as well,
Mm.
home care, elderly home care. There's a lot of franchises that are coming up to support the aging population as well here in Canada.
Mhm.
Just like Family is an example of that.
Okay.
If you don't know about them, you can definitely check them out.
You said just like
Um,
family?
just like Family franchise, yeah.
Mhm.
And you know, you touched just recently on the importance of aligning passion and value
Mhm.
and your values with a brand, right?
Mhm.
Just because you might like the food at this particular restaurant doesn't
Mhm.
necessarily mean that it's the right fit for you for your business. So
Yeah.
really understanding what you hope to get out of the business, what type of
Mhm.
time you want to invest, what type of
Mhm.
energy you want to invest. Do you have the capital to pay someone to run it, or are you planning on running it yourself? These are
Mhm.
a lot of the questions that I work with my clients through to
Mhm.
help them determine what direction they want to go in, because it can be overwhelming. There's a lot of options out there.
Yeah, there are a lot of options out there. And you're right. It's not even just about, I like this place. It is also about, like, do you actually connect to it on a level where you feel like you can have success in it because you're going to wake up happy doing it every day. And that's a big thing. I often say there is a franchise that I want to. And if anybody is there's a franchise that you're interested in, drop it in the comments, because I just always like to see where people's minds are. So drop your favorite franchises in the comments and talk to us about what's interesting to you. I have for the last 20 years said that I want to open up this franchise called Nothing But Cakes. If anybody's on here has had a nothing but cake, you know why. It is not just that the cakes are amazing, but anyone who knows me knows that LeaderKeys is my second business. And there's a whole group of people that are out there who literally refer to me by my first business, which was called Tracy Treats, and I did cake decorating. But the thing about it is the tagline is that the tagline was creating tasty memories more than doing, because I actually am not that big of a fan of cake. I don't like icing, but but it was my passion. But what I loved more than doing like the cakes themselves, it's what they represented, it's what they did. Like every time I delivered one, like it becomes part of whatever the event is that they ordered it for, and it's a part of the memory. And it's that is what I'm passionate about, is like creating memories that people hold on to and pass down, generation to generation. So, like, yes, it sounds like a cake business, but what really drives me particularly to that franchise is the memories that that business creates. And that's it. It's the tie to something in your values, something, or something for your community. Like, those things are important to think about when you're thinking about franchising. So,
Absolutely. The
yeah.
connection, the connection to
Yeah,
the
the
brand.
connection. Yeah, definitely, definitely. All right, number 4. Despite systemic barriers in accessing capital, many Black women have actually successfully navigated financing to establish and grow their franchises. And I found that to be true both in the US and in Canada. In the US, there's a lot of different organizations that are actually specifically put into place to help Black women and minorities access capital.
Yes.
What is that looking like in Canada?
I would say there definitely has been a growth, especially in a post 2020 world, where there's funding available
Mhm,
for marginalized communities, specifically for Black people, but Black women, since that's the topic today and the audience today.
mhm,
I think where we miss sometimes is all these organizations and all these funding opportunities operate in a silo, and you really have to go searching and digging and
mm,
looking for information. I think if we created a space or a place where all those resources can pool together, um,
mhm.
make it more accessible, make it easy. Not everybody learns by Google.
Right.
Some people need a conversation. Some people want to talk to somebody
Mhm,
um, about what it is that they're looking into. And so creating spaces where entrepreneurs or wannabe entrepreneurs can access information in accessible ways beyond just Google this and fill out this application, I
mhm,
think will be really important.
mhm,
um, and
mhm,
a lot of funding, I think it's like millions of dollars in Canada goes unclaimed in
mhm.
funding and grants every year. And
Yeah.
so how do we connect our communities to those grants and those opportunities
Mhm.
more intentionally? How do we get
Yeah.
into schools? How do we get into
Mhm.
churches? How do we get into the places and spaces that we meet and greet?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that absolutely. There's actually a comment in here that talks about says, I'd love to see more Black owned hair and beauty supply franchises. The community needs this. I mean, absolutely. That came from Simply Sean. And like that one I love because again, these are authentic and unapologetic conversations. So we're gonna say the thing. But having to go to a beauty supply and only see us as the consumers and not the owners is disturbing. It is disturbing, right?
Yes.
And especially like when we know what we need, we know our customers and things like that. So it's also thinking about how to enrich your community because the community and the circulation of the Black dollar is really
Yes.
really important, right? It's really important. I want to put a pin in something you said because we're going to get into it a little bit later when I talk about, Melissa, where are you going in the future? But about pulling collectively resources together and having a central hub for it. I'm a big believer in doing things across the Black diaspora because we're everywhere. We're in so many different countries,
Yeah.
and our diaspora is so huge, but we are very interconnected in terms of things like our personal care and our dietary needs and everything. Like those things bind us. And so there we should be able to collectively address and have resources that we can tap into worldwide. Of course, the technical legal things are going to be nuanced country to country, state to state, like things like that. However, uh, just being able to have one place for just general knowledge and resources and everything would be powerful. So we'll get into that a little bit later towards the end. All right. Number 5, last fact. Organizations and networks have emerged to support Black women in franchising, offering mentorship, resources, and advocacy to foster success. I added this on here knowing that we were probably going to say it in the last fact, which is what we did. But you said something interesting. You were like, not everybody learns by going and Googling and figuring out stuff. In the learning and development, my background's in learning and development. So I do, I work a lot in the, the learning philosophy space. And one of the philosophies are around 70-20-10, that we learn best by hands-on. Like 70% of what we do is through experience, by being hands-on, being exposed to things like that. 20% is through relationships. That's the
Mhm.
mentoring, that's the advocacy, that's the connecting to people, that's shadowing, that's all of those things, right? Only 10% is formal learning. Like, so
Yeah.
it's interesting that we pour ourselves into, you know, do your homework and put in the work and things like that of like research and pushing research, but you're going to find out more when you just start talking to people.
100%. 100%. And just on the tip of, resources and advocacy and all of that, it's Women's History Month, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And, you know, being a part of the largest Canadian franchise association in Canada, hosting over 400 brands, I will also go as far as to say sometimes certain groups are prioritized,
Mm.
are visible, and even though your messaging in the words might say we're welcoming and championing all women,
Mhm.
when your images, when your content, when your systems don't reflect all women,
Mhm.
it can lead to feelings of exclusion. It can lead to feelings of franchising isn't for Black women, it's for
Mhm.
those other women. And
Mhm.
so I would say here in Canada, we can do a better job. The established associations can do a better job at creating that connection
Mhm.
and looking internally at how they do things to attract more Black women and invite more Black women into
Mhm.
these spaces. Because I still show up oftentimes as the only, even today.
Mhm.
So That's what I think
Mhm.
is also important.
Yeah, no, definitely. You and I have been interacting for going on 2 years now. And I've been through multiple conferences and places you've spoken or you've presented at or you've hosted a roundtable or you've moderated. Like I've been through ups and downs with you. And every single time you're like, yep, it was just me. It was just me, right? And I think it's more prevalent probably in Canada than it is in the US, but our representation is not really that much greater here at all. But and especially when you start getting into those spaces like your certification bodies and those types of events and things like that, it gets less and less. And we know that the further you get and closer you get to the ceiling, the less and less we exist, right? And that's our goal today, is to go, but you know what, we can we can absolutely do that. And I think it's important that we talk about data a little bit. So I'm gonna bring that up and kind of keep, feeding our left brain people a little bit and talk about that, because representation is the first point, right? And I know it's a little harder in Canada to actually get hard numbers because you don't track demographics the way that we do in the US. So keep in mind that the data that we pull, we literally had to do some engineering to go in and find some of these things, especially on your end. And but we can also speak to other trends in terms of entrepreneurship to kind of give us a glimpse inside. But as I was doing and reading, and we were working iteratively on this particular slide, there's a lot of commonality. Like our the numbers are pretty aligned, right?
Yes. Yes.
When you look at the representation, in the US, Black entrepreneurs make up 3%. In Canada, it's 2.1% of all business owners. Those numbers are not far apart. So 2 to 3%, right, between our two
Exactly.
countries. US business owners, of those, there's 21% are Black women owned, right? And because and of that, that's 50% are Black women owned of that 21%. So
Exactly.
it's interesting. And then in Canada, it's 29.6 are women.
Yes.
So it's the numbers don't lie. Like there is so much room for us to be in this space.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
And, on the point of representation, it really is about it being intentional. And, I'd love to challenge franchisors, the established brands, the emerging brands, to take a look at their franchise demographic trends. And it's not about excluding one group, but it is about taking a hard look at the data. And if the last 50 franchise partners that you've onboarded all suit the same demographic, all fit into the same demographic, you
Mhm.
know, it's worth looking at, hey, is there another group that might be missing out here? Is there something that we need to do differently in our strategy, whether it's lead generation, marketing, whatever, to attract more, to cast a wider web?
Right.
And having worked for a lot of quick service restaurant brands, I can tell you that there's a story of the one Black woman that
One.
I got to
Mhm.
interview, and I was a part of her journey from I'd like to buy this franchise to
Mhm.
Melissa, I
Mhm.
can't believe I'm opening my seventh store.
Right.
And I'll tell you, there were at least 3 different times where she could have been shot down for her opportunity
Mm.
because
Mm.
someone doubted she deserved to be there. Whether
Right.
it was because her experience was from the motherland,
Mhm. Mhm.
whether it was because she had a bit of an accent and didn't
Mhm.
fit the current state of ideal franchise partner,
Right.
or
Right.
whether it was the first time she was going to be owning that specific type of business.
Mhm.
A lot of those skills, entrepreneurial skills, are cross functional. You can apply it and get it done. And
Right.
so we need more leaders championing representation, diverse representation. We need more
Mhm.
leaders championing giving people an opportunity,
Mhm.
even if
Mhm.
they don't fit the current mold of what you think is the current trend of an ideal franchisee. We need
Right.
more people championing that representation change.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. And that's why what you do is so important. That's why, because you're actually doing something about that and talking about it. Just talking about it is a step all in itself, because we know how much people want to just ignore, the ignore the data, ignore all the stuff. I'm putting power into my laptop. Yeah, I'm running out of power. I don't know what's going on here, so I don't want to lose you guys. I definitely don't want to all of a sudden not be in this session. But yeah, that's why the conversations like this are just so important. All right, let's get into a little bit more. So, from an economic performance perspective, 97% of franchises have fewer than 20 employees. 75% have fewer than five, and Black-owned franchises earn about 2.2 times more than independent businesses. And again, those numbers are pretty close in Canada as well. That again, predominantly small scale with five or less employees. So that matches up. 40% of startups versus 92% of franchises succeed in the first 3 years. Okay, that which is about 2.5 times, right?
Yes,
So again, that's adding up too, but that's a big one. Like, just for everybody to digest that, what we're basically saying here is that, from if you're just starting your own business, most fail within the first 2 to 3 years. But the difference in doing a franchise or going into a franchise, buying into a franchise, is astronomical. Like, you have more than double the chance of succeeding by year 3.
absolutely.
That's
And
so cool.
and what I'll say to that is, the tag is always franchising is like being in business for yourself, but not by
By
yourself,
yourself.
right?
Yes, that's it.
But
That's
not
the
by yourself.
tag.
Yeah.
That is the tag. All right. I love that. I love that. All right. Sorry, I'm having like this weird power issue that's going on, so I'm just going to give up on it now. But yeah, I love what you said there, because that's exactly what it is, and we're going to talk about that a little. So I think we actually touched on that a little bit, about these are established and proven systems and processes that you're buying into. You're just not winging it out here like we often do when we
Yeah.
start our own businesses. So that's a huge advantage. All right, so let's talk about challenges and opportunities, and we're going to get into these a little bit more in a second. But the challenges, again, also mirror each other between the US and Canada. In the US, we had a little data to work with, that there's the biggest thing is having access to capital. 1% obtain loans in the first year, compared to our white counterparts that are more like 7%, right? And this is for Black women versus white women. 44% rely on personal cash to start. And one of the challenges is just financial literacy, mentorship being another, and then networking opportunities being limited, which is the same for Canada as well. Again, because there's not a lot of demographic tracking that's happening, this one's a little bit harder to like really pinpoint the challenges. But I'm going to go out on a limb and say they're probably the same things.
Yes, yes. And the lack of data is a huge contributor to
Mhm.
the barrier, because so many of the decision makers, whether it's on the franchising side, the banking side, they rely on the data, right?
Right.
And so not having it to give weight to the story sometimes that we're telling. Like, I can say, hey, I've onboarded 200 franchise partners and only two of them have been Black, period, right?
Hmm.
Across 6 brands. But that's just my experience. But when we data that supports and tells the story of not just Maliesa, but Canada as a whole,
Hmm.
then again, it just adds a little bit more weight. And so, again, I would love to see organizations that are already established, that are, already doing great work in the franchising space and creating networking and connection opportunities,
Hmm.
to ask for the data,
Yeah.
to put some resources behind getting the data.
Mhm.
It will serve us all. It will serve us all. And, when it comes to overcoming some of those challenges, which I know is the next piece, I
Mhm.
want to talk about the power of networking.
Mhm. So much power in that.
Ah,
Mhm.
ah, I can
Mhm.
honestly say, and you probably agree because we talk about it all the time, but
Mhm.
there is something so special about being in a room, whether it's a virtual room or a live room, in real life room.
Mhm.
There's something so powerful about when people come together, joint in purpose, joint in passion, joint in wanting to be there. And
Right.
even if you're not selling something, even if you're not putting your business on display in that very moment,
Mhm.
it might not be that person, but it might be someone that they know or someone that they
Right.
know. And that's sometimes what leads to the opportunities. Some of the best
Mhm.
opportunities that have come my way, whether it be speaking engagements or coaching clients, have been through networking.
Mhm.
Um, I was actually just at a networking event last night. I brought my younger
Mhm.
sister along with me just to expose her to, what it is.
Okay.
And it goes back to that point I made earlier, which is people learn differently. And so
Yeah.
being able to learn in that environment where, the speaker was very engaging, she gave real life examples, she stuck around for
Mhm.
questions at the end.
Mhm. Yeah,
Now I
invaluable.
now I
Yeah,
have
invaluable.
questions. People know, franchising, Melissa, hot perspectives. It Yeah, it
Yeah,
goes
it
a
all
long
comes together. Yeah, you do have to get out there, but there's so much power in doing that, and you just never know where the next opportunity is. You also never know what opportunity you may provide to someone else. That is also a thing. That's it's a paying it back and forward is essentially what networking is. And when we can do it and create the spaces that again we are actually in, it becomes even more powerful. And that speaks to what this slide is talking about where the opportunities are and what solutions are either out there or that we can start thinking about creating ourselves. And you and I spent a lot of time talking about that. Like our relationship has been built on what solutions are we creating? What are we putting out there? What's the value? Like we've had that conversation in so many different ways that I think it has led, I know for you, it has led to all different types of things you're going to put into place. And this is why I tell everybody, like, you need to know Melissa now, while she's in this state of, pulling things together, because like what you're doing is very exciting and it's very engaging and enriching for people, for us, to learn about this type of a space, something that we don't just readily think of.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So there's a lot of different things. I'm going to, at the end of this and in the comments, I'm going to put a lot of different resources around that. But I name a couple in here, like the National Black Chamber of Commerce in the US. There's initiatives like the Minority Business Development Agency, all working towards really helping Black entrepreneurs through resources, advocacy, networking opportunities. And those are the types of things that you're looking at in Canada, as well as like really establishing. There is the Canadian Franchising Association, the CFA, but I mean, something that's specific to Black women. So let's talk about that a little bit, because that gets into like the work you're envisioning yourself doing outside of the coaching and the speaking, but of like collectively putting something together for Black women. So let's talk about that.
Absolutely. So I spoke earlier about, my why and why I'm passionate about inclusion, but why I don't just work with entrepreneurs. I also work in the franchisor space and trying to build systems and build awareness over there. I can honestly say that what fills me up, what gets me excited is
Mhm.
what's happening over here with the entrepreneurs that have never thought about franchising and how
Mhm.
it can lead to wealth generation, how it can lead to legacy building,
Mm-hmm.
and why coming together as a community, sometimes it takes a lot of effort to try to get a seat at the table. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you realize, actually, I have all the tools and resources I need to build my own over
There you
here.
go. Mm-hmm.
And so I've been spending a lot more time connecting with nonprofits and organizations that are centered around the upliftment of our communities. Um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Calabash is one that I recently joined. They are a group of entrepreneurs with a bunch of different coaching and skill sets and funding and grant
Mm-hmm.
writing. And they're just so well resourced, and they're great connectors to opportunities. And so
Mm-hmm.
seeking out membership with and community with these organizations that center Black excellence, center Black generational wealth and Black
Mm-hmm.
community. I know sometimes it feels like you're being exclusionary or you might be niching or missing out on opportunities, but they speak our language. We understand the
Mm-hmm.
challenges, and it feels different when you walk into a room where you feel like you belong and you
Mm-hmm.
show up different. And again, just being intentional about investing in those opportunities to connect with the groups of people that you want to grow with is
Mm-hmm.
has been the biggest game changer.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
Definitely. I mean, we talk about this all the time about, seeing ourselves. And when we don't see ourselves, it automatically puts us in a different state of mind. Not necessarily that it's always a bad thing. It's not, but it would be nice to kind of walk into a space and it's like, oh, this is where we are at. And
I
there's a lot
can't
of us.
wait. I can't wait for the day that my dream
Hmm. Hmm.
is to host a convention here in Canada, maybe in Toronto,
Hmm.
and invite banks, invite community, invite entrepreneurs, invite
Hmm.
suppliers,
Hmm.
invite our community to come together and see how we can build this ecosystem for ourselves. We can
Yeah.
be franchisors, we can be franchisees, we can supply the franchise industry, we can fund the franchise industry. We just have to
Hmm.
be intentional about coming
Right.
together to get it done. And so
Yeah.
I'm working on it. I'm working
It's
on
it's
it.
it's coming. I know you have already talked about it and envisioned it and put it out into the atmosphere. So I already know what's happening. It's just a matter of time. And I'm gonna be right there cheerleading you on and doing whatever I can to support you. But like that needs to happen. I think in Canada, in the US, I think across our whole entire diaspora. So I'm excited for something like that to actually exist. And I'm gonna be there for it. So it's exciting to me, but I want to jump into it because we're going to now dive into the last piece of this, which is going to kind of just talk about like how do you actually get into it, what does it actually look like. Before we jump into that, I'm going to give everybody an actual example. So I pulled one out, and this is Dixon. If you're not familiar with Don Dixon, and let me go ahead and get her website up here. Dawn Dixon did something really incredible. She actually has invested in six profitable companies. Some of them franchises, some of them not. But what she's most famous for is Flat Out of Hills, which actually she put like these rollable flats into vending machines and then franchised the vending machines. Like it's like brick and mortar without the brick and mortar, right? And like movable, and it's like easier to man. But she basically took franchising concepts and applied it to a really unique concept of
Yeah.
something that we all like. Imagine going to a vending machine when your feet hurt, you're out and your feet hurt, and you need a pair of flats, and you can just go to a vending machine and get that. Like it exists, and this is who brought that into existence. Because what I will say about franchising, maybe even starting your own franchise, why I think we Black women are so uniquely positioned for that is because we're innovators. Like this is what we do. Like this is what we do. We come up with things, we come up with solutions to real problems that we have. So like there's so much, like we were talking about, feeding into franchises and investing in a franchise, but there's value in also starting our own franchise. So I wanted to put this example out here to kind of lead us into that conversation of like the opportunities within franchising that we have. So I want you to walk us through this and help the audience to understand where the opportunities are in franchising.
Yeah, just a quick point on Dawn. I didn't know her prior to us connecting for this call, but what really
Mhm.
stood out to me as well is it's not really just about, she took an idea and she
Mhm.
got it out there. She adapted a scalability mindset and
Mm.
said,
Mhm.
how do I get this out to the masses? I'm not trying to sell
Absolutely.
one-on-one. I'm trying to sell to the masses.
Masses. Yes.
And I saw the word licensing there, and licensing and
Mhm.
franchising are slightly different.
Mhm.
Similar model, slightly different. I would say
Mhm.
the biggest difference between the two is the level of involvement that you
Right.
have between the franchisee or licensee and the franchisor.
Right.
So both very good options. And
Mhm.
I know we didn't talk too much about licensing, but similar and
Yeah.
very profitable too.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely, absolutely. And I think that was I think her background was in franchising, so it was the franchising mindset that she applied into her model, that I think this is what made it successful. So like there's so much value, and that's the thing about cross-pollination, right? Is that you learn one piece of business and learn how to apply that into another piece of business, and you pull those things, all of those things leading up to what you just said, having a scalability mindset. So walk
yeah.
us through the difference between a franchisor, franchisee, and a supplier.
Yeah. So a franchisor is you've built a franchise brand, right? You have a business and you're ready to see it grow exponentially. There are a lot of different models out there on how you can sell and expand your franchise brand. One of
Mhm.
those ways is, one unit at a time, one franchise partner at a time. You could also decide you want to sell a territory or a
Mhm.
space and make someone responsible for developing an entire territory for you.
Okay.
So that's an example of building a franchise.
All
With
right.
buying a franchise, pretty much you want to invest in and operate a business. You don't want to do it by yourself. You want to do it with some systems, some processes. You don't want to start from scratch. Again, for yourself, but not by yourself.
Okay.
What the point I would make on there again is the importance of alignment in
Mhm.
what you choose. Because
Right.
I'll tell you, before that ink dries, you want to make sure that you've done your research and made the right decision.
Mhm.
And then the last category, and it's the category I'm always the most excited to talk about, is
Mhm.
supplying the franchise industry.
Mm.
And whether you're a construction company, whether you're a designer, whether you're an influencer, a photographer, there is space within the franchising ecosystem for everyone.
Mhm.
And understanding how your product fits into that brand's mission, vision, that is what's going to get you the connection. I always tell people leverage LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a
Mhm.
great way to find out who are the decision makers, how do I make a
Mhm.
good connection so that
Mhm.
I can position my brand in a way that appeals to the brand and the decision makers of that brand.
Yeah. I think a really great example of that, and this is off the cuff, we didn't even talk about it, but I think this is probably a good example of a supplier supplying the franchise industry will probably be sort of like what Pattern Beauty did, because they didn't just go in like a lot of other businesses to go in and they have their product that's in a store or in multiple stores. They literally went into Ulta, and I believe Tracy Ellis Ross actually has a title within that. It might be a board level title or something like that, but essentially was like, I'm going to supply the Ulta brand with my brand. brand, right? And which is a different level. But I think that's kind of, so is that sort of what you're talking about?
Yeah, that's a great example.
Mhm.
I would say another example is, brands sometimes need uniforms. Maybe you're a
Right.
printer, maybe you're a supplier of t-shirts and aprons and hats, and maybe there's a
Mhm.
brand out there that's starting out or emerging or growing quickly that needs a
Right.
production of that. And
Mhm.
in today's climate, especially with everything that's going on south of the border,
Mm.
it
Mhm.
is
Mhm.
it is the best time to tap
Mhm.
into local community and find alternative sources to supply whatever it is that you need, right?
Right.
Or a juice brand, a fresh juice
Mhm.
brand, where is your supply coming from? Is there a neighborhood
Mhm.
farm or a neighborhood community center
Right.
that could benefit from a partnership like that? So
Mm.
that's how I want to, that's what 2025 is going to be about. It is going to
Yeah.
be about making these connections between,
Connection to that.
suppliers and
Yeah.
the franchising
And the
industry.
franchises.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. So, like, if LeaderKeys wanted to be the preferred supplier of leadership development for all Hilton industries, I'm just
Yeah.
going to put it out in the universe, right?
Yeah.
So, that's an example of a service even serving a franchise.
Absolutely. You have the
Okay,
framework,
I
you
got
have
it.
the model, you have the experience, it works.
That's right. We're making authentic and unapologetic leaders across all of Hilton.
Hey.
No, maybe if someone from Hilton's on the call, I don't know. It could be anybody. I don't really care. But I get what you're saying, and it was an aha moment for me as well to even think of even my own business as something that can be franchised or supply franchises. So like, it was not even a thought that I even had in my head, which is really quite interesting to me. All right. So we've got about 7 minutes left. We had a lot of comments, not too many questions. If you got questions, now is the time. Put them into the chat. While you're doing that, I also want you to engage in us. We're going to play a little game called Fact or Fiction. And so we're going to jump into that. And then Melissa's going to help kind of dive us into a little bit more information for each one of them. So this is kind of our speed round. So in the chat, fact or fiction, franchising is the same as starting your own independent business. So put into the chat, is that a fact or is that fiction? That franchising is the same as starting your own independent business. All right. So I'm seeing in a couple of different places. So we've got fiction, fiction. All right, you guys are smart. So yeah, it is fiction. Melissa, tell us a little bit more.
Yes, so it's not starting from scratch. Again, business for yourself, not by yourself. You're operating a business using established brand systems and standards, which also means you can't go rogue and do your own thing.
That's exactly that. Exactly that. Like I liken that to I one of the things I do when I travel the world, I go to McDonald's in every country I go to. And you are going to get the same McDonald's fries. It does not matter if you are in Timbuktu or Kansas City or Singapore, those fries are going to be the same. And now, is there going to be a nuance of something, localized? Yes. But the Big Mac and the fries is going to be the same no matter you go. So yeah, it's fiction. What did you just say? Business for yourself, but not by yourself. You need to put that on a t-shirt.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that. Fact or fiction, you have to be a millionaire to own a franchise. Now, and this is one I hear people say all the time. Like, what's $1 million? Like, you hear this one all the time. So is that fact or fiction? You have to be a millionaire. So the answer is fiction.
Yes. And we
Mhm.
talked a little bit about, the different franchise models that are out there. Again, there
Mhm.
are some franchises that just require $20,000 upfront and ongoing fees can be, 2-3%.
Mhm.
So you definitely don't need to be a millionaire. I
Yep.
would also say you can get creative. If you do want to buy into a franchise that's a little bit more valued at a little bit more, why not with a sister friend? Why not partner with a family member or,
I love
someone
that.
within the community to make it happen?
Mhm. pull money together again. Like, we're talking about building generational wealth out here, y'all. So like, we're not, none of us says, you're not going to get anybody who will say, no, I don't want to do that. So like, there's plenty of people that you can connect with. Family is a really great place to start. Connections, colleagues, peers, that, like, there's so many different ways to go about doing this. So yeah, don't be scared, and no, you don't have to be a millionaire. All right, last one. Franchises are always successful because they follow a proven system. Fact or fiction? Melissa was like, I like putting this one in here. I like this one. All right. And we've got a really smart audience. So the answer is it's actually fiction. So say a little bit more.
Yes. So you talked a little bit about your experience with the Golden Arches and the fact that you can rely on what? A consistent experience.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so the risk that you take as a franchisor and even as a franchisee is
Mm-hmm.
you're trusting your brand experience to other
Yeah.
people. You're
Yes.
letting go of some of that control and trusting that the systems that you have in place will be used and executed, and every person that visits your brand is going to have a brand standard consistent experience.
Right. Right. Right.
But it's still
Exactly.
people running
Right.
businesses, right? And
Right.
we're not perfect, and we don't always follow it the way it needs to be. And sometimes we fall on
Mhm.
hard times, and sometimes our star employees quit, and sometimes life happens.
Yeah, it happens. Mhm.
And that's why making sure that you do a good job at vetting the organization, the brand that you're thinking about joining, or if you're thinking about scaling, you put that investment into developing the systems and the people. You got
Mm.
to train them. You got to coach them. It's not a
Mhm.
one and done. You got to hold
Right.
them accountable. You have to have an escalation process in place, because we know it just sometimes takes one bad experience to
Mhm.
destroy a brand.
The whole thing. Mhm.
So
Yeah.
you really have to choose to be connected and remain connected to whatever brand you choose to partner with or
Yeah.
flow with. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm going to add one more thing that is absolutely necessary. You have to connect with Melissa to be your coach, to guide you through this process. But I mean, she just literally advertised herself without advertising herself, because I told you Hot Perspective stands for HR, operations, and training. And everything you just described, it was those three things, because Melissa knows what she's talking about. And as much as you feel like you want to go out there and do all the things and jump into it, no one gets anywhere alone. So like, having a coach in this space is like, it's gold. You want to have that. So I want to make sure that everybody is able to connect with Melissa. I'm putting up her Calendly, because you should be getting, if you're even thinking about franchising or buying in or supplying, you want to connect with Melissa.
Yeah.
So this is her discovery call link. Write it down. I'm going to put it into the chat and comments that we have afterwards. So you want to make sure that you connect, book a call with her. It should be your first stop. If anything, make sure that you connect with her on LinkedIn. Do yourself a favor, the more you know. If you enjoyed this presentation, several of you asked about the slides and whether it's going to be recorded. All of my conversations are always on my YouTube page. So you can go to YouTube to LeaderKeys Unlocked, and you can find this conversation. It's going to be there as soon as it finishes wrapping up and processing. So I promise by end of the day, you'll be able to get it off of YouTube. You can do the replay on LinkedIn as well as on Facebook. I think the only place that doesn't do replays is Instagram. But other than that, you can find things everywhere. I want to just take this time to just thank you, Melissa, for being a part of this conversation. I'm probably going to have you back at some point to dive into this more. So if you guys want to hear more from Melissa, let me know, and we'll get her back. Send your questions, put all of your questions into the comments on this page. And then there's something special if you're still on here for another 2 minutes. You want to write this down. If you do that discovery call, and you want to then put in, get some coaching from Maliesa, she is offering 20% off of her coaching package. Just put authentic and unapologetic in your request, and she will hook you up. So, again, if this is anywhere in your thought process, connect with Maliesa. That is your instant next step. All of her socials are here on this page. Again, Maliesa, thank you so, so, so much. We're going to be perusing the comments and the comment section on all our platforms after this, so we can continue the conversation, and I'm going to continue to put in some resources. Thank you so much, Maliesa. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you so much. Thanks everyone for joining, and hope to hear from some of you soon.
Awesome. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Thank you for sticking around and being a part of this authentic and unapologetic conversation. Bye for now.